With the retirement of Congressman Olver, Fitchburg and its surrounding communities will be losing a strong advocate for transportation, whether it's through highway repairs or investment in commuter rail. What is your plan to address infrastructure improvements in this region's public transportation needs?
Well, thank you, Marissa, for that question, and thank you to Dr. Antonucci and Fitchburg State University, as well as the Fentanyl Enterprise. That is a great question, and I can tell you that as Congressman Olver had made the decision to retire, he brought both me and Congressman McGovern, who will be representing Leominster, to March to get a briefing on all the work that he's done around double-tracking the Fitchburg State Rail Line. And this was an effort that I was involved in previously as well, because it runs through Littleton and Acton, where both of those communities have been heavily engaged in the double tracking, so that it can support either those who are commuting into Boston for work, or those, in the case of Littleton in particular, people who are actually coming up from Boston and are going to IBM or going to Red Hat or going to companies that are in that area. So I understand how critically important it is to move that project ahead, work with Congressman McGovern to continue to be sure that it goes along as it's been planned to do. It's so important to the future of Fitchburg. But it raises a broader question as to what is the role of a member of Congress. In my view, is representing the cities of Haverhill, Lawrence, Lowell, Methuen, now coming out to Fitchburg and Gardner, is that the member of Congress has to be a very engaged partner. And that is either working with the community to advance the vision for itself, working with the businesses who may have a challenge with the federal government and want to resolve an issue, or are simply looking for support, and working with our constituents. So we will have an office here in Fitchburg so that we can remain very engaged in whatever form makes the most sense. And as I said, it will be around advancing the vision that Fitchburg has for itself, because as an engaged partner, we will want to be there as invited to solve problems where it is an issue of, for example, the rail line that requires federal funding as part of the overall effort. No piece of government can do it by itself. It requires the state government, the federal government, the local government working together around infrastructure projects that are so important to the growth and advancement of the community.
Okay, rebut by John.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Dr. Antonucci, and thank you to the students of Fitchburg State. Thank you to our panelists tonight. Thank you very much. Well, I spent an awful lot of time here traveling around this district, and when I first announced my run back in the middle of December, I spent the first 2.5 months almost exclusively out in 11 new cities and towns. And it's a very diverse part of the district. I actually have a campaign office here because I've always said that there's no one part of the district that's more important than the other. And I'm going to make sure that I put equal emphasis on every single city and town in this district. Look, I think it's important that we focus on the development of infrastructure in this state, and more importantly in this district. But I think it's important also that we recognize that a large part of our tax dollars that are sent down to Washington, D.C. are then returned for pennies on the dollar. I think that the Department of Transportation is one place where we can devolve this decision-making process back to Massachusetts, much in the same way I think we should do it for education. The same way educators know what's best for the students of this state, I think the people of this state know what's best for what their transportation needs are, not Washington bureaucrats. I will say this. I think it's important that we make sure that we get this economy growing again. Because any type of funding for a project like this, while it might take some federal funds and some state funds, the best funds that we can use are funds that are being generated by a growing economy, creating jobs and tax revenues that are going back into these cities and towns in this district that currently suffer under chronically high unemployment, higher than the state average. Thank you.
Okay, any back and forth? Any last comment, Congressman?
Well, I would also add that there has been the President's Jobs Act, which has not yet been brought to the floor of the House by my colleagues across the aisle, that would provide important infrastructure funding, because we know not only is the Fitchburg rail line, which is now fully funded, but other projects around the district that are very important to the growth of the communities, whether it's a project called the I-93 interchange, that was an outcome of 3 communities working hard together, Andover, Tewksbury, Wilmington, whether it's the Methuen interchange. These are all projects that are needing investment as I said, help advancing the growth of these communities, and my colleagues across the aisle have refused to bring it to the floor for even a vote, because even as it would invest in our communities, it would put millions of people back to work.
John, last comment?
Representative Tsongas, I appreciate your appeal to the people on the other side of the aisle, but it's a two-way street. You aren't the only person that votes 95% of the time for the leadership of your party. I recognize that there are members of my own party. And I can say this, while I recognize that there might be some requirements to having federal funds for projects like this, there's no substitute for growing this economy, creating jobs, getting people back to work, and getting tax revenues coming into these cities and states, especially when it comes to unfunded mandates that they're suffering from right now. Thank you.
Next.